The hum of the airplane engines faded as Anya Vance adjusted her sunglasses, stepping onto the jet bridge at JFK. Her father's voice echoed in her mind, clear and steady, as it had been all those years ago. "Remember this, daughter. You are black. You are a woman. You have to work twice as hard for them to see you as an equal." The words had been a mantra, a shield, and sometimes a burden. She had carried them through the academy, through every undercover assignment, and now, as she walked through the bustling airport, they anchored her. She was here for a reason, a mission that demanded her focus, her skill, and her silence. The weight of her laptop bag pressed against her shoulder, a reminder of the delicate balance she maintained. Inside that bag was more than just a computer. It was evidence, intelligence, and the key to stopping a cyberattack that could cripple the nation. She couldn't afford mistakes. Not now. Not ever. The airport was alive with motion and sound. Travelers hurried past, their voices blending with the constant stream of announcements overhead. Anya moved with purpose, her posture straight, her steps measured. She wore a tailored blazer, dark jeans, and boots, simple, professional, and unassuming. Her hair was pulled back into a sleek bun, and her makeup was minimal, just enough to blend in. But beneath the calm exterior, tension simmered. Her eyes scanned the crowd, noting the security cameras, the officers patrolling the area, and the occasional traveler who lingered too long. She had spent 2 years infiltrating the ghost network, earning their trust, and gathering the intelligence now stored on her laptop. Every second counted. She adjusted the strap of her bag, her fingers brushing against the hidden compartment where her FBI badge was concealed. It was a last resort, a tool she hoped she wouldn't need. Her cover as Lena Walker, a tech consultant, had to hold. As she approached the security checkpoint, she felt it, the unmistakable sensation of being watched. Her instincts kicked in, honed by years of training and fieldwork. She slowed her pace, her gaze flicking toward the source of the attention. Officer Marcus Holt stood near the checkpoint, his arms crossed, his eyes fixed on her. His expression was hard, his posture rigid. Anya's stomach tightened, but she kept her face neutral. She had dealt with men like him before, men who saw her skin and her gender as reasons to doubt her. She handed her boarding pass to the attendant, her movements deliberate and unhurried. Holt stepped forward, his voice cutting through the noise. "Ma'am, step aside for a random screening." The words were polite, but the tone was anything but. Anya met his gaze, her expression calm. "Of course, officer." Holt motioned for her to follow him to a secondary screening area. Anya complied, her mind racing. She knew the drill, this wasn't about security. It was about control. He began with the usual questions. "Where are you coming from?" "Chicago," she replied, her voice steady. "Purpose of your trip?" "Business." "What kind of business?" Anya hesitated for a fraction of a second. "Tech consulting." "I'm here for a conference." Holt's eyes narrowed. "Let me see your ID." She handed over her driver's license, the one that identified her as Lena Walker. He studied it, his lips pressed into a thin line. "This says you're from California. Why's a tech consultant from California flying in from Chicago?" Anya forced a polite smile. "I was visiting a client." "Is there a problem, officer?" Holt didn't answer. Instead, he gestured to her laptop bag. "Open it." Her fingers tightened around the strap. The laptop contained encrypted files, sensitive data, and traces of her undercover work. If Holt dug too deep, her mission could be compromised. But she had no choice. She unzipped the bag, her movements slow and deliberate. Holt watched her like a hawk, his suspicion evident. He pulled out the laptop, turning it over in his hands. "This looks expensive. What kind of work do you do that requires such high-end equipment?" "I specialize in cybersecurity," she said, keeping her tone even. "My clients expect top-tier performance." Holt grunted, setting the laptop aside and rifling through the rest of her belongings. Anya's pulse quickened as he picked up a small notebook, flipping through its pages. It was filled with coded notes, harmless to anyone who didn't know what to look for, but potentially damning if Holt decided to dig deeper. "What's this?" he asked, holding up the notebook. "Work notes," she replied. "I like to jot down ideas when they come to me." He stared at her for a moment, then tossed the notebook back into the bag. "Stay here. I need to run a few checks." Anya nodded, her face calm, but her mind was already calculating her next move. She couldn't afford to let Holt derail her mission. Not now. Not when she was so close. As Holt walked away with her laptop, Anya's mind raced. She could end this now, flash her badge, demand to speak to his supervisor. But that would blow her cover. The Ghost Network was watching, and any misstep could alert them. She thought of her father's words again. Asterisk, "You have to work twice as hard." Asterisk, she had worked twice as hard, 3 times as hard, to get here. She couldn't let Holt's prejudice derail everything. Her training kicked in. She focused on her breathing, on the details around her, the hum of the airport, the weight of her badge in her pocket, the faint click of Holt's pen as he scribbled notes. She glanced at the clock on the wall. Time was slipping away. The Ghost Network cyberattack was scheduled to go live in less than 24 hours, and every delay put the nation at greater risk. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a coded message from her team. She couldn't check it now, not with Holt watching her like a hawk. But the vibration was a reminder, she wasn't alone. Her team was counting on her. Holt returned, her laptop in hand. "Everything checks out," he said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "But I'll need to keep this for further inspection." Anya's stomach dropped, but she kept her expression neutral. "How long will that take?" "As long as it takes," he replied, his voice firm. She nodded, her mind already working on a backup plan. She couldn't let Holt's harassment jeopardize the mission. She had come too far, sacrificed too much, to let this stop her. Holt's words hung in the air like a threat. "As long as it takes." Anya's stomach tightened, but she kept her face calm, her posture relaxed. She couldn't afford to show even a flicker of frustration. "I understand," she said, her voice steady. "But I have a conference to attend. Is there any way to expedite the process?" Holt's expression didn't change. "Rules are rules, ma'am. We can't make exceptions." Anya nodded, her mind already racing through her options. She couldn't let him keep her laptop. The encrypted files, the traces of her undercover work, if Holt dug too deep, her mission would be compromised. But confronting him directly wasn't an option. Not yet. She glanced around the screening area, taking in the details. A few travelers were being processed nearby, their movements hurried and anxious. Security cameras lined the walls, their red lights blinking steadily. Holt's colleagues moved about, their attention focused on their own tasks. No one seemed to notice, or care, about what was happening here. Holt set her laptop on a table and began typing on a nearby computer, his back to her. Anya's eyes flicked to the clock on the wall. Time was slipping away. The Ghost Network cyberattack was scheduled to go live in less than 24 hours, and every delay put the nation at greater risk. Her phone buzzed again in her pocket, another coded message from her team. She couldn't check it now, not with Holt so close. But the vibration was a reminder, she wasn't alone. Her team was counting on her. Holt turned back to her, his expression unreadable. "I'll need to ask you a few more questions," he said, pulling out a notepad. Anya forced a polite smile. "Of course, officer." He began with the basics, her full name, her address, her employer. Anya answered calmly, sticking to the details of her cover identity. But Holt's questions quickly took a sharper turn. "You said you're here for a conference," he said, his tone casual but his eyes sharp. "Which one?" "The Global Tech Summit," she replied without hesitation. "And who's your employer?" "Walker Consulting," she said, naming the fictitious company she had created for her cover. Holt scribbled something in his notepad, his pen scratching against the paper. "And what exactly does Walker Consulting do?" "We specialize in cybersecurity," she said, keeping her tone neutral. "We help companies protect their digital assets." Holt's eyes narrowed. "Cybersecurity, huh? That's a pretty broad field. What's your role?" "I'm a senior consultant," she replied. "I work directly with clients to assess their vulnerabilities and implement solutions." Holt nodded, but his expression suggested he wasn't satisfied. "And how long have you been with the company?" 3 years, she said, her voice steady. He paused, his gaze locking onto hers. 3 years. That's a long time to be in such a specialized field. Anya held his stare, her expression calm. "It's a growing industry. There's always work to be done." Holt didn't respond immediately. Instead, he flipped through his notepad, his movements slow and deliberate. Anya could feel the tension building, the unspoken accusation in his silence. Holt's questions grew more pointed, his tone sharper. "You said you flew in from Chicago. What were you doing there?" "Meeting with a client," Anya replied, her voice calm but her mind racing. She had prepared for this, rehearsed every detail of her cover story, but Holt's intensity was testing her focus. "What's the client's name?" he asked, his pen poised over his notepad. "I'm afraid that's confidential," she said, her tone polite but firm. "Client privacy is a cornerstone of our work." Holt's lips tightened. "Confidential, huh? That's convenient." Anya didn't flinch. "It's standard practice in my industry. I'm sure you understand." He leaned in slightly, his voice dropping. "What I understand, ma'am, is that you're being evasive. And that makes me wonder what you're hiding." Anya met his gaze, her expression steady. "I'm not hiding anything, officer. I'm simply following protocol." Holt straightened, his eyes narrowing. "We'll see about that." He turned back to the computer, typing something quickly. Anya's pulse quickened. She didn't know what he was looking for, but she couldn't afford to let him dig too deep. Her cover was solid, but no identity was foolproof under intense scrutiny. Her phone buzzed again in her pocket, the vibration faint but insistent. She couldn't check it, not with Holt watching her like a hawk. But the repeated messages were a reminder, her team was waiting, and time was running out. Holt turned back to her, his expression unreadable. "I'm going to need you to empty your pockets." Anya hesitated for a fraction of a second before complying. She pulled out her phone, her wallet, and a small set of keys, placing them on the table. Holt picked up the phone, turning it over in his hands. "Password?" he asked, his tone clipped. "It's biometric," she replied. "Fingerprint or facial recognition." Holt held it out to her. "Unlock it." Anya's stomach tightened, but she kept her face neutral. She pressed her thumb to the sensor, the screen lighting up instantly. Holt began scrolling through her apps, his movements deliberate. "No messages?" he asked, his tone skeptical. "I cleared them before my flight," she said. "Company policy." Holt grunted, setting the phone down and picking up her wallet. He flipped through it, pulling out her credit cards and ID. "You travel light for someone in your line of work." "I prefer to keep things simple," she replied. He didn't respond, his attention focused on her cards. Anya watched him closely, her mind working through the possibilities. If he decided to detain her, if he called for backup, her mission would be over. She couldn't let that happen. Holt set the wallet down and turned to her, his expression hard. "I'm going to need you to come with me." Anya's heart skipped a beat, but she kept her voice calm. "Is there a problem, officer?" "We'll discuss it in private," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Holt gestured toward a door marked "Authorized Personnel Only." Anya's instincts screamed at her to resist, to flash her badge and end this charade, but she forced herself to stay calm. She couldn't blow her cover, not yet. She followed him into a small, windowless room. The walls were bare except for a security camera in the corner, its red light blinking steadily. A single table and 2 chairs occupied the center of the space. Holt motioned for her to sit, and she complied, her movements deliberate. He took the seat across from her, his posture rigid, his eyes never leaving her face. "Let's try this again," he said, his tone cold. "Who are you, really?" Anya met his gaze, her expression calm. "I've already told you, officer. My name is Lena Walker. I'm a tech consultant here for a conference." Holt leaned forward, his voice low. "See, here's the thing. I've been doing this job a long time, and I know when someone's lying to me. And you, ma'am, are lying." Anya didn't flinch. "I'm not sure what you mean." "Your story doesn't add up," he said, his tone sharp. "You fly in from Chicago, but your ID says California. You claim to be here for a conference, but you can't give me a single client's name. And your laptop," he tapped it with his pen, "is loaded with enough encryption to make me think you're hiding something big." Anya's mind raced, but her face remained neutral. "As I said, client confidentiality is a priority in my line of work. And the encryption is standard for cybersecurity professionals. I'm sure you understand the need for data protection." Holt's eyes narrowed. "What I understand is that you're not being straight with me. And that makes me think you're involved in something illegal." Anya forced a polite smile. "I assure you, officer, I'm just here for work. If there's anything else I can clarify, I'd be happy to." Holt didn't respond immediately. Instead, he stood and walked around the table, stopping behind her. Anya tensed but didn't turn around. She could feel his presence, too close, too invasive. "Stand up," he said, his voice firm. Anya hesitated for a fraction of a second before complying. As soon as she was on her feet, Holt stepped closer, his hands moving toward her. "I need to conduct a more thorough search," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Anya's jaw tightened as his hands brushed against her sides, his touch lingering longer than necessary. She could feel the heat of his breath, the way his movements were less about security and more about intimidation. "Officer," she said, her voice steady but firm, "this is unnecessary. I've already been screened." Holt ignored her, his hands moving to her arms, then her waist. His touch grew more invasive, his fingers pressing into her skin in a way that made her stomach churn. "Stop," she said, her tone sharp this time. "You're crossing a line." Holt paused, his face inches from hers. "I decide where the line is," he said, his voice low. "Now stay still." As he continued his invasive search, he muttered under his breath, loud enough for her to hear. "How did a woman like you even get this job? Did they just hand it to you because you're black? Or did you sleep with the boss?" Anya's fists clenched at her sides, but she forced herself to remain calm. She couldn't afford to react, not with her mission hanging in the balance. But the anger simmering beneath her surface was growing harder to contain. Finally, Holt stepped back, his expression smug. "You can sit down." Anya returned to her seat, her movements slow and deliberate. She could feel his eyes on her, watching, waiting for her to slip up. Holt gathered her belongings, including her phone and laptop, and walked to the door. Before he left, he turned back to her. "Don't go anywhere." The door clicked shut behind him, leaving Anya alone in the room. She took a deep breath, her mind racing. She couldn't afford to wait for Holt to finish his checks. Every minute he delayed her was a minute closer to the Ghost Network cyberattack going live. Her training kicked in. She scanned the room, noting the camera, the door, the vents. There had to be a way out, a way to regain control of the situation. But first, she needed to think. Alone in the small, windowless room, Anya took a deep breath, forcing herself to focus. The walls seemed to close in around her, the faint hum of the airport's ventilation system the only sound. Her mind raced, torn between the need to maintain her cover and the growing urge to confront Holt's abuse of power. She thought of her mission, the reason she was here. For 2 years, she had worked tirelessly to infiltrate the Ghost Network, a shadowy cyber-espionage group planning a devastating attack. The intelligence she had gathered was stored on her laptop, now in Holt's possession. If he accessed those files, if he compromised her identity, the consequences would be catastrophic. Her father's voice echoed in her mind again. Asterisk, you have to work twice as hard. Asterisk, she had done that and more. She had sacrificed relationships, sleepless nights, and countless hours to get this far. She couldn't let Holt's prejudice and arrogance undo everything. But the anger simmering beneath her surface was hard to ignore. The way he had touched her, the way he had spoken to her, it wasn't just unprofessional, it was degrading. She had faced men like him before, men who saw her skin and her gender as reasons to doubt her worth. But this time, the stakes were higher. She glanced at the clock on the wall. The Ghost Network's cyberattack was scheduled to go live in less than 24 hours. Every minute Holt delayed her was a minute closer to disaster. Anya's mind raced through the possible scenarios. If she revealed her identity now, flashed her badge, and demanded to speak to Holt's supervisor, it might end the harassment. But it would also blow her cover. The Ghost Network had eyes everywhere, and any slip could alert them. She couldn't risk it. On the other hand, if she stayed silent, Holt might dig deeper into her laptop, uncovering the encrypted files. Even if he couldn't access them, the mere fact that he had them in his possession was a threat. The Ghost Network's operatives were meticulous, they would notice if their data was compromised. She thought of her team, waiting for her signal. They were counting on her to deliver the intelligence that would stop the cyberattack. If she failed, millions of lives could be at risk. The weight of that responsibility pressed down on her, sharpening her focus. Her training kicked in. She began to mentally catalog the information she had memorized, passcodes, contact numbers, emergency protocols. She had prepared for situations like this, though she had hoped never to face them. Her phone buzzed again in her pocket, the vibration faint but insistent. She couldn't check it, not with Holt likely watching her through the camera in the corner. But the repeated messages were a reminder, her team was waiting, and time was running out. She glanced at the door, her mind working through the possibilities. Could she create a distraction? Could she find a way to retrieve her laptop without alerting Holt? Every option carried risks, but doing nothing wasn't an option. As the tension in Anya's story builds, we want to hear from you. Have you ever felt unfairly targeted in a public space? Share your experiences in the comments. What would you do in Anya's situation? Comment below. If you're enjoying this content, please like and subscribe for more gripping stories. I'd also love to know where you're watching from, let me know in the comments. Your thoughts and engagement mean a lot to us. Let's keep the conversation going. Anya Vance hadn't always planned to join the FBI. Growing up in a small town in Georgia, she had dreamed of becoming a software engineer, using her love for technology to build something meaningful. But life had other plans. When she was 16, her older brother, Malik, was wrongfully arrested during a traffic stop. The charges were eventually dropped, but the experience left a lasting mark on Anya. She had watched as her brother, a hard-working college student, was treated like a criminal simply because of the color of his skin. The injustice of it all ignited something in her, a determination to fight back, to protect others from the same fate. Years later, after earning a degree in computer science, Anya found herself drawn to the FBI's cybercrime division. It was the perfect blend of her technical skills and her desire to make a difference. She excelled in the academy, earning top marks in both fieldwork and cybersecurity. But it wasn't just about the grades, it was about the mission. When the opportunity to infiltrate the Ghost network arose, Anya didn't hesitate. The group was one of the most dangerous cyber-espionage rings in the world, responsible for countless attacks on critical infrastructure, financial systems, and government agencies. They operated in the shadows, their members scattered across the globe, their identities hidden behind layers of encryption. Anya knew the risks. She would have to leave her old life behind, adopting a new identity and cutting off contact with everyone she knew. But she also knew the stakes. If the Ghost network succeeded in their next attack, it could destabilize entire economies, disrupt essential services, and put countless lives at risk. She took the assignment without hesitation. For Anya, it wasn't just a job, it was personal. Anya's transformation into Lena Walker began with meticulous preparation. The FBI's tech team created a flawless digital footprint for her new identity, social media profiles, employment history, even a fake degree from a prestigious university. Lena Walker was a rising star in the tech world, a cybersecurity consultant with a reputation for solving complex problems. Her first contact with the Ghost network came through a dark web forum, where she posed as a freelance hacker looking for work. It took months of careful communication, building trust one message at a time. She had to prove herself, demonstrating her skills in a series of tests designed to weed out imposters. Finally, she was invited to a private chat room, where she met Spectre, the network's enigmatic leader. Spectre was cautious, his messages cryptic, but Anya's expertise won him over. She was given her first assignment, infiltrating a mid-sized bank security system and extracting customer data. Anya completed the task flawlessly, but not before secretly alerting the FBI to the breach. The bank's systems were fortified, and the stolen data was replaced with false information. To the Ghost network, it was a success. To the FBI, it was a critical first step in dismantling the group. Over the next 2 years, Anya worked her way deeper into the network. She attended secret meetings in dimly lit warehouses, communicated through encrypted channels, and earned the trust of key members. Each mission was a balancing act, completing the task without causing real harm, all while gathering intelligence for the FBI. She learned the network structure, its hierarchy, and its plans. The Ghost network wasn't just a group of hackers, it was a well-organized criminal enterprise with ties to governments, corporations, and terrorist organizations. Their next target was their most ambitious yet, a coordinated cyber attack on the power grids of multiple major cities. The stakes couldn't have been higher. As Lena Walker, Anya lived a double life. By day, she was a tech consultant, attending conferences and networking events, building her cover. By night, she was a trusted member of the Ghost network, working on high-stakes operations that could make or break her mission. One of her closest contacts within the network was Phantom, a skilled hacker with a penchant for chaos. Phantom was unpredictable, but he respected Lena's skills and often sought her advice on complex projects. Anya used this relationship to gather intelligence, subtly steering him toward tasks that would expose more of the network's operations. Then there was Wraith, the network's logistics expert. Wraith was meticulous, his plans flawless, but he had a weakness, arrogance. Anya played on this, flattering him while secretly feeding information to the FBI. But the most dangerous member was Spectre. The network's leader was a ghost in every sense of the word, elusive, untraceable, and utterly ruthless. Anya had only interacted with him a handful of times, but each encounter left her on edge. Spectre's trust was hard-earned and easily lost. One wrong move, one slip-up, and her cover would be blown. The risks were constant. Anya had to be careful with every word, every action. She couldn't afford to make mistakes. But the pressure was relentless. One night, during a meeting in a secluded warehouse, Spectre unveiled the network's next target, a coordinated attack on the power grids of New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago. The plan was to cause widespread blackouts, crippling the cities and creating chaos. Anya's heart raced as she listened to the details. The attack was scheduled to go live in less than a month. She had to act fast. Infiltrating the Ghost network was a high-wire act, and Anya knew that one misstep could be fatal. The network's members were paranoid, constantly on the lookout for traitors. They used advanced encryption, anonymous communication channels, and counter-surveillance techniques to stay hidden. Anya had to be equally vigilant. She memorized passcodes, encrypted her communications, and avoided patterns that could reveal her true identity. Every interaction was a calculated risk. One of the biggest challenges was gaining the trust of key members. Phantom, Wraith, and the others were skilled hackers, but they were also deeply suspicious. Anya had to prove herself repeatedly, completing increasingly difficult tasks without raising suspicions. But the real danger came from Spectre. The network's leader was a master manipulator, always testing his subordinates, always looking for weaknesses. Anya had to tread carefully, balancing her need to gather intelligence with the need to maintain her cover. The stakes were higher than ever. The Ghost Network's planned attack on the power grids was just the latest in a series of devastating operations. Over the years, they had hacked into government agencies, stolen billions from financial institutions, and even sabotaged critical infrastructure. One of their most infamous attacks was on a major hospital chain. They had encrypted patient records, demanding a ransom to unlock them. When the hospital refused to pay, the network deleted the data, causing chaos and putting lives at risk. Another operation targeted a nuclear power plant. The hackers had gained access to the plant's control systems, but the FBI had intervened just in time. The incident had been kept quiet, but it was a stark reminder of the network's capabilities. Anya knew that the power grid attack would be even worse. If successful, it could plunge entire cities into darkness, disrupt emergency services, and cause widespread panic. She couldn't let that happen. Over the course of her 2-year infiltration, Anya gathered a wealth of intelligence about the Ghost network. She learned the identities of key members, their operational methods, and their long-term goals. The network was divided into cells, each specializing in a different aspect of their operations. Phantom led the hacking team, Wraith handled logistics, and Spectre oversaw everything. There were also financiers, recruiters, and even a team dedicated to disinformation campaigns. Anya's most critical discovery was the network's plan to attack the power grids. The operation, codenamed Blackout, involved infiltrating the control systems of multiple power companies and triggering a cascade of failures. The goal was to cause widespread blackouts, crippling the cities and creating chaos. But the attack wasn't just about disruption. The Ghost network planned to exploit the chaos for financial gain. They had already set up shell companies to profit from the resulting stock market crash, and they had ties to criminal organizations that would take advantage of the unrest. Anya also uncovered evidence of the network's ties to foreign governments. Spectre had been in contact with operatives from several countries, offering the network services in exchange for funding and protection. It was a chilling reminder of the global reach of the Ghost network. The information Anya gathered was invaluable, but it came at a cost. Every piece of intelligence she collected increased the risk of exposure. She had to be careful, balancing her need to gather information with the need to maintain her cover. Great! Here's part 6 of Undercover mission details, where we wrap up the section by highlighting the culmination of Anya's mission and the critical information she gathered. Let me know if this meets your expectations, and I'll proceed to the next section once you approve. As Anya's infiltration reached its final stages, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. She had gathered enough intelligence to identify the Ghost network's key members, their operational methods, and their plans for the blackout attack. One of the most critical pieces of information was the location of the network's command center. Hidden in a nondescript building in a quiet suburb, the center housed the servers and equipment needed to carry out the attack. Anya had managed to obtain the address through a combination of careful observation and subtle manipulation. She also learned the timing of the attack. The Ghost Network planned to launch Blackout in less than 24 hours, giving the FBI little time to act. Anya knew she had to get the information to her team as soon as possible. But the final piece of the puzzle was the most chilling. Spectre had a contingency plan, a failsafe that would trigger the attack even if the command center was compromised. The details were unclear, but Anya knew it was a threat that had to be neutralized. As she prepared to extract herself from the network, Anya reflected on the risks she had taken and the sacrifices she had made. She had spent 2 years living a double life, burying her true self under layers of deception. But it had been worth it. The information she had gathered would save lives and prevent a catastrophe. Now, as she sat in the small, windowless room at the airport, her laptop in Holt's possession, Anya knew she was running out of time. The Ghost Network's attack was imminent, and every minute counted. She took a deep breath, her mind racing through the possibilities. She had to find a way to regain control of the situation, to get the information to her team before it was too late. The door to the small, windowless room clicked shut behind Holt, leaving Anya alone with her thoughts. But the solitude didn't last long. Holt returned minutes later, her laptop in one hand and a smug expression on his face. "Still not talking, huh?" he said, setting the laptop on the table. "You know, most people would be a little more cooperative when they're being investigated." Anya kept her expression neutral. "I've answered all your questions, officer. I'm not sure what else you want from me." Holt leaned against the table, his arms crossed. "What I want is the truth. You're hiding something, and I'm going to find out what it is." He opened her laptop, the screen lighting up with a prompt for the encryption key. "Care to explain why your files are locked?" Anya's stomach tightened, but she kept her voice calm. "As I said earlier, encryption is standard in my line of work. It's to protect sensitive client information." Holt's eyes narrowed. "Or to hide something illegal. You wouldn't be the first consultant we've caught running scams." Anya forced a polite smile. "I assure you, officer, I'm not running any scams. If you'd like, I can provide references from my clients." Holt didn't respond immediately. Instead, he leaned closer, his voice dropping to a low, menacing tone. "Here's the thing, Lena. I don't like being lied to. And I don't like people who think they're smarter than me. So, unless you want this to get a lot worse, I suggest you start cooperating." Anya met his gaze, her expression steady. "I'm not lying, officer. And I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm just following protocol." Holt straightened, his lips curling into a smirk. "We'll see about that." Holt's demeanor shifted from smug to openly hostile. He paced the small room, his boots clicking against the floor, his eyes never leaving Anya. "You think you're clever, don't you?" he said, his voice sharp. "Coming in here with your fancy laptop, your encrypted files, your client confidentiality. But I've seen your type before. You're not as smart as you think you are." Anya remained silent, her hands resting calmly on the table. She knew better than to engage with his provocations. Holt stopped pacing and leaned over the table, his face inches from hers. "I'm going to ask you one more time. What's the password?" Anya met his gaze, her voice steady. "I've already told you, officer. The encryption is for client protection. I can't give you access without violating their trust." Holt slammed his hand on the table, the sound echoing in the small room. "Don't play games with me. I know you're hiding something, and I'm going to find out what it is." Anya didn't flinch, but her mind raced. She had to find a way to de-escalate the situation without compromising her mission. "Officer," she said, her tone calm but firm, "I understand you're just doing your job. But I'm not a threat. If you'd like, I can provide documentation to verify my identity and my work." Holt straightened, his expression darkening. I don't need your documentation. I need the truth. And if you won't give it to me willingly, I'll find another way to get it. He turned and walked to the door, opening it just enough to call out to a colleague. Get me the tech team. I need this laptop unlocked ASAP. Anya's heart sank. If the tech team accessed her files, her cover would be blown. She had to think fast. Holt returned to the table, his expression smug. You're running out of time, Lena. Once the tech team gets here, your little game is over. Anya's mind raced. She couldn't let Holt access her laptop, but she also couldn't risk revealing her identity. She had to find a way to stall. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. And if you don't start cooperating, I'll make sure you regret it. Anya's stomach churned, but she kept her expression neutral. She couldn't afford to show any sign of weakness. The door opened, and a member of the airport security team stepped in. Everything okay in here? Holt straightened, his tone dismissive. Everything's fine. Just dealing with a difficult passenger. The security officer glanced at Anya, his expression unreadable, before nodding and stepping back out. The door clicked shut, leaving Anya alone with Holt once again. Holt turned back to her, his eyes narrowing. You think someone's going to come save you? Think again. You're mine until I say otherwise. Anya's jaw tightened, but she forced herself to stay calm. She couldn't let Holt's intimidation tactics get to her. Holt picked up her laptop again, his fingers tapping impatiently on the keyboard. Last chance, Lena. What's the password? Anya took a deep breath, her mind racing through her options. She had to find a way to regain control of the situation, but every option carried risks. Holt's patience was wearing thin. He slammed the laptop shut, the sound echoing in the small room. You think you're clever, don't you? Sitting there, playing the innocent victim. But I see right through you. Anya remained silent, her hands resting calmly on the table. She knew better than to engage with his provocations. Holt leaned over the table, his face inches from hers. You're not leaving this room until I get what I want. And if you think anyone's going to come save you, think again. Anya's mind raced. She had to find a way out of this, but every option carried risks. She couldn't let Holt access her laptop, but she also couldn't risk revealing her identity. The door opened again, and this time, it was a supervisor, a middle-aged man with a stern expression. What's going on here? Holt straightened, his tone defensive. Just dealing with a suspicious passenger. She's refusing to cooperate. The supervisor glanced at Anya, his expression unreadable. Ma'am, is there a problem? Anya took a deep breath, her voice steady. I've been trying to cooperate, but Officer Holt seems to think I'm hiding something. I've offered to provide documentation to verify my identity, but he's not interested. The supervisor turned to Holt, his brow furrowing. Is that true? Holt's jaw tightened. She's lying. Her laptop's encrypted, and she's refusing to give me the password. That's suspicious behavior. The supervisor hesitated, his eyes flicking between Anya and Holt. Finally, he nodded. All right. But let's keep this professional. No need to make a scene. Holt's expression darkened, but he didn't argue. The supervisor left, the door clicking shut behind him. Holt turned back to Anya, his eyes blazing. You think you're smart, don't you? But this isn't over. Not by a long shot. Anya met his gaze, her expression calm but her mind racing. She had to find a way out of this, and fast. In a dimly lit command center miles away from the airport, the FBI team assigned to the Ghost Network operation was on edge. Monitors lined the walls, displaying real-time data feeds, encrypted communications, and a map tracking Anya's location. The tension in the room was palpable as the team watched the situation unfold through coded updates from Anya. Special Agent Mark Harris, the team leader, paced the room, his frustration evident. She's been in that room for over an hour. If Holt compromises her cover, the entire operation is blown. She knows what she's doing, said Sarah Collins, the team's tech specialist, her eyes glued to the screen displaying Anya's last coded message. She's handled worse than this. Not with this much on the line, Mark shot back. If the Ghost Network catches wind of this, they'll go dark, and we'll lose our shot at stopping the attack. Sarah turned to him, her tone firm. Anya's the best undercover agent we've got. If anyone can handle this, it's her. We need to trust her. Mark sighed, running a hand through his hair. I know she's good. But Holt's a wild card. If he pushes too hard. The room fell silent as the team considered the stakes. The Ghost Network's cyberattack was scheduled to go live in less than 24 hours. Every minute counted, and every delay increased the risk of failure. Anya's phone buzzed faintly in her pocket, the vibration a lifeline to her team. She couldn't check it, not with Holt watching her like a hawk, but she knew what it meant. Her team was waiting for an update, and she had to find a way to communicate without raising suspicion. She shifted slightly in her seat, her fingers brushing against the edge of the table. It was a subtle movement, but it allowed her to press a hidden button on her watch, a prearranged signal to her team that she was still in control. In the command center, Sarah's monitor lit up with the signal. She's okay, Sarah said, relief evident in her voice. She's still in control. Mark nodded, but his expression remained tense. We need more than that. We need to know what's happening in that room. Anya knew the risks of sending a more detailed message, but she also knew her team needed information. She waited for Holt to turn his back, then quickly typed a coded message into her phone, her movement subtle and deliberate. The message appeared on the command center's main screen, Holt suspicious. Laptop compromised. Need extraction plan. Ghost Network attack imminent. Mark cursed under his breath. If Holt accesses that laptop, it's over. We need to get her out of there. Sarah shook her head. We can't risk it. If we intervene, it could blow her cover. We need to trust her to handle this. Mark hesitated, his frustration evident. And if she can't? She will, Sarah said firmly. She's been in tighter spots than this. The team fell silent, the weight of the decision hanging in the air. They knew the stakes, and they knew the risks. But they also knew Anya. The team's frustration was palpable. They had spent months building this operation, and now it was being held up by one overzealous officer. Meanwhile, in the isolation room, Anya saw her chance. Holt stepped out briefly to speak with a colleague, leaving her alone for the first time in what felt like hours. She moved quickly, her training kicking in. She reached into her bag, pulling out a small, custom-built device disguised as a USB drive. Plugging it into her laptop, she initiated a secure connection to the FBI's servers. The screen flickered as the device bypassed the airport's network security, establishing a direct link to the command center. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, typing a coded message, Holt compromised laptop. Sending critical files. Stand by. Within seconds, a progress bar appeared on the screen as the encrypted files began uploading. Anya kept one eye on the door, her heart pounding. If Holt returned too soon, it would all be over. In the command center, Sarah's monitor lit up with the incoming transmission. She's sending us something, she exclaimed, her voice tinged with relief. Mark rushed to her side. What is it? Encrypted files, Sarah said, her fingers already working to decrypt them. Looks like intel on the Ghost Network's operations. The team watched in tense silence as the files decrypted, revealing detailed information about the network's plans, members, and locations. This is it, Mark said, his voice filled with determination. This is what we've been waiting for. But their relief was short-lived. The files also contained a chilling update: the Ghost Network had moved up their timeline. The attack was now scheduled to go live in just 12 hours. The command center buzzed with activity as the team analyzed the files Anya had sent. The intel was a goldmine: names, locations, operational details, everything they needed to dismantle the Ghost Network. But the urgency of the situation was impossible to ignore. "They've moved up the timeline," Sarah said, her voice tense. "The attack is now set for 12 hours from now. We're running out of time." Mark stared at the screen, his jaw clenched. "We need to act fast. But if we move now, we risk exposing Anya. Holt's already suspicious, and if he catches wind of this..." Agent Ramirez leaned forward, his expression grim. "We can't afford to wait. If we don't stop this attack, millions of people could be affected." Anya knew the risks when she took this assignment. Sarah shook her head. "Anya's the one in the field. She's the one who got us this intel. If we blow her cover now, all of this could be for nothing." While the debate continued, some team members had already started working on the intel. Sarah and two other tech specialists were decrypting files, cross-referencing names and locations, and mapping out the Ghost Network's operations. "We've got a lead on their command center," one of the specialists called out. "It's in a nondescript building in the suburbs. If we move fast, we can hit it before they know what's happening." Mark turned to the specialist, his expression intense. "What about the failsafe? Anya mentioned a contingency plan. Do we have any details on that?" Sarah shook her head. "Not yet. But we're working on it. Give us a few more minutes." Mark paced the room, his mind racing. "What if we send a small team to extract Anya? We can do it quietly, without tipping off Holt or the Ghost Network." "Too risky," Sarah countered. "If Holt sees anything suspicious, he'll escalate, and that could put Anya in even more danger." The team fell silent, the weight of the decision pressing down on them. They knew the stakes, and they knew the risks. But they also knew Anya. "We need to trust her," Sarah said finally. "She's handled worse than this. If anyone can get out of this situation, it's her." Mark hesitated, then nodded. "All right. We'll give her a little more time. But if we don't hear from her soon, we're going to have to make a call." The team returned to their work, their eyes glued to the monitors. Every second counted, and every delay increased the risk of failure. Anya Vance had always been good at compartmentalizing. It was a skill she had honed over years of undercover work, the ability to separate her true self from the persona she adopted. But as the hours dragged on in the isolation room, the lines between Lena Walker and Anya Vance began to blur. She thought of her father's words, the ones that had guided her through so many difficult moments. "You have to work twice as hard." She had done that and more, but the strain was starting to show. Holt's constant harassment, the pressure of the mission, the fear of exposure, it was all taking its toll. Anya could feel the weight of it pressing down on her, threatening to crack her carefully constructed facade. She glanced at the clock on the wall. The Ghost Network's attack was now just hours away, and every minute counted. But Holt's interference was making it impossible for her to focus. As the hours passed, Anya's focus began to waver. The constant pressure of maintaining her cover while dealing with Holt's harassment was taking its toll. Small mistakes started to creep in, tiny slips that could have catastrophic consequences. At one point, Holt asked her a seemingly innocuous question: "What's your favorite part about working in cybersecurity?" Anya hesitated for a fraction of a second too long. Her mind, trained to think like Lena Walker, almost answered with a rehearsed response about problem-solving and innovation. But in her exhaustion, she nearly slipped into her true self, almost mentioning her passion for justice and protecting others. "I enjoy the challenge," she said finally, her voice steady but her heart racing. "Every problem is like a puzzle, and I love finding the solution." Holt's eyes narrowed, as if he sensed something off. You hesitated. Why? Anya forced a polite smile. Just thinking about how to explain it in a way that makes sense to someone outside the field. Holt didn't look convinced, but he let it drop. Anya exhaled quietly, her mind screaming at her to stay sharp. Another close call came when Holt picked up her phone, which she had placed on the table earlier. He glanced at the screen, which was locked, and then at her. You get a lot of messages for someone who's supposed to be focused on work. Anya's stomach tightened. The messages were from her team, coded updates about the Ghost Network's movements. If Holt decided to dig deeper, her cover would be blown. It's mostly work-related, she said, her tone casual. Clients and colleagues. You know how it is. Holt's expression was skeptical, but he set the phone down without further comment. Anya's heart was pounding, but she kept her face neutral. The harassment escalated when two other officers entered the room. They stood by the door, their arms crossed, their expressions smug. What's the hold-up, Holt? One of them asked, his tone mocking. Can't handle a little girl on your own? Holt smirked. She's playing hard to get. Won't tell me what she's really doing on her system. The other officer stepped closer, his eyes scanning Anya with a mix of disdain and curiosity. What's the matter, sweetheart? Too good to answer a few questions. Anya's jaw tightened, but she forced herself to stay calm. I've answered all of Officer Holt's questions. I'm not sure what else you want from me. The first officer laughed, a harsh, grating sound. Feisty, huh? I like that. But you're not going anywhere until we get some real answers. Holt leaned in, his voice low and menacing. What were you doing on your system, Lena? And don't give me that client confidentiality crap. We both know there's more to it. Anya's mind raced. She had to find a way to deflect their questions without raising further suspicion. I was reviewing security protocols for a client. It's standard procedure. The second officer snorted. Yeah, right. You expect us to believe that? The three officers exchanged glances, their smirks growing wider. The tension in the room was suffocating, and Anya could feel the walls closing in. These small mistakes and the escalating harassment were adding up, each one a reminder of how precarious her situation was. The mental strain was becoming unbearable, but she couldn't afford to let it show. As Anya's story unfolds, we want to hear from you. These moments of tension and injustice are all too real for many people, and your voice matters. Have you ever witnessed racial profiling or abuse of power in a public setting? What did you do? Share your experiences in the comments below. Do you think airport security measures are fair and effective? Why or why not? Let's discuss how we can balance safety with respect for individual rights. Please share this video, so others can be aware of the dangers of racial profiling. Together, we can spark conversations and drive change. Your thoughts and stories are powerful. Let's keep the conversation going and work toward a world where everyone is treated with dignity and fairness. Holt stood up, stretching lazily. I'm going to grab a coffee, he said to the other officers. Keep an eye on her. Don't let her out of your sight. The two officers nodded, their smirks widening as Holt walked toward the door. Anya's mind raced. This was her chance. She couldn't let him leave, not when he had her laptop and the evidence it contained. As Holt reached for the door handle, Anya stood up, her voice firm. Officer Holt, you're not going anywhere. Holt turned, his expression a mix of surprise and annoyance. Excuse me. Anya stepped forward, her posture confident, her eyes locked on his. I said, you're not going anywhere. Not until we have a little chat. The other officers exchanged glances, their smirks fading. One of them stepped forward, his tone mocking. What's the matter, sweetheart? You think you're in charge now? Anya ignored him, her focus entirely on Holt. You've been harassing me for hours, accusing me of things you have no proof of. But let's talk about you, Officer Holt. Let's talk about your history of racial profiling and abuse of power. Holt's eyes narrowed, his expression darkening. You don't know what you're talking about. Oh, I think I do, Anya said, her voice calm but firm. I know about the complaints filed against you. I know about the people you've targeted, the lives you've ruined. And I know that you've been protected by a system that turns a blind eye to your misconduct. The room fell silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. The other officers exchanged uneasy glances, their confidence wavering. Holt took a step toward Anya, his voice low and menacing. You're crossing a line, Lena. Anya didn't flinch. My name isn't Lena. It's Anya Vance. Special Agent Anya Vance, FBI. The air in the small holding area crackled with tension. Holt's face, moments ago a mask of arrogant authority, now twisted with a mix of shock and fury. FBI, he sputtered, his voice laced with disbelief. You expect me to believe that? Anya reached into her jacket and pulled out her badge, the gold glinting under the harsh fluorescent lights. Special Agent Anya Vance. This is my official identification. She held the badge out, letting the other officers see it clearly. You can run the numbers. You can verify my identity. The two officers, their earlier bravado replaced with a palpable unease, exchanged nervous glances. One of them, a younger officer with a slightly less hardened expression, reached for his radio. I'm going to verify this. Holt's eyes narrowed, his gaze fixed on Anya. This is a setup, he growled. You're trying to frame me. Frame you? Anya's voice was calm, almost conversational. Officer Holt, you've been framing innocent people for years. You've been abusing your power, targeting individuals based on the color of their skin. You've been hiding behind a badge, believing you're untouchable. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a low, intense whisper. That's why I played along, Officer Holt. I've heard about you. I've had conversations with people, friends, who have provided me with details of your actions. I knew you were the type to single me out. I knew you were the type to abuse your power. And I knew I had the information to stop you. Anya pulled out her phone, the screen displaying a file filled with documents and images. I have evidence, Officer Holt. Detailed records of your misconduct. Recordings of our conversations. She paused, letting the implication hang in the air. Holt's face flushed crimson. He took a step back, his eyes darting around the room, searching for an escape. You're bluffing, he said, his voice trembling slightly. You have nothing. The other officers were silent, their faces pale. They were witnessing a scene they never expected, a reversal of power that shook their understanding of the world. The younger officer, his radio still in his hand, stared at Anya with a mixture of awe and fear. Holt's facade was crumbling, his arrogance replaced with a desperate fear. He knew he was trapped, exposed. Anya pressed forward, her voice gaining a steely edge. You see, Officer Holt, you made a mistake. You underestimated me. You thought I was just another face, another target for your prejudice. But I'm not. I'm here to hold you accountable. She looked directly at Holt, her eyes filled with a cold determination. You've been protected for too long, Officer Holt. But those days are over. You're not above the law. And you're not beyond justice. Holt's shoulders slumped, his bravado completely gone. He looked around the room, his eyes pleading, but found no support. The other officers, their faces grim, looked away. Anya turned to the younger officer. You need to place Officer Holt under arrest. He's a danger to the public, and he's a disgrace to the uniform you wear. The younger officer, his hand trembling, reached for his handcuffs. He looked at Holt, his expression a mix of disgust and disappointment. Officer Marcus Holt, you're under arrest for abuse of power, falsifying reports, and obstruction of justice." As the handcuffs clicked around Holt's wrists, a wave of relief washed over Anya. The weight of her mission, the tension of the past few hours, began to dissipate. The other officer, the one who had been smirking earlier, stepped forward, his voice low and apologetic. I didn't know. I had no idea." Anya looked at him, her expression softening slightly. "Ignorance is no excuse. But you have a choice now. You can continue to turn a blind eye, or you can stand up for what's right." She turned back to Holt, who was being led away in handcuffs. "This isn't just about you, Officer Holt. It's about everyone you've wronged. It's about the system that allowed you to get away with it for so long. And it's about making sure that this never happens again." As Holt was escorted from the room, Anya took a deep breath. Her work wasn't finished, but a significant battle had been won. Anya stepped out of the holding area, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly. But there was no time to rest. The clock was ticking. The Ghost Network's cyberattack was imminent. She pulled out her phone, her fingers flying across the screen as she accessed a secure communication channel. "This is Vance," she said, her voice urgent. "Holt is in custody. But the operation is still active. What's the status?" A voice crackled through the phone. "Vance, we're tracking the network's activity. They're ramping up. The primary target is the national infrastructure grid. We believe the attack will be initiated within the hour." Anya's heart pounded in her chest. The national infrastructure grid. The backbone of the country's power, communication, and transportation systems. If the Ghost Network succeeded, the consequences would be catastrophic. Anya hesitated. She knew the risks. Revealing the location could compromise her mission, expose her contacts within the network. But the stakes were too high. "They're operating from a secure server farm in upstate New York," she said, her voice low. "The address is..." She recited the coordinates, her heart pounding with each digit. "We have it, Vance. We're deploying a tactical team now. But we need you there. You're the only one who can identify the key players. You're the only one who can confirm their identities." Anya took a deep breath. "I'm on my way." She ended the call and turned to the younger officer, who was watching her with a mixture of awe and confusion. "I need a car," she said, her voice firm. "I need to get to upstate New York. Now." The officer nodded, his eyes wide. "Yes, ma'am. Right away." He led her to a waiting patrol car, the sirens wailing as they sped out of the airport, leaving the chaos behind. As the car raced through the city streets, Anya's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. She was a law enforcement officer, an undercover agent, a woman caught in the middle of a high-stakes battle between justice and chaos. She knew the risks. She knew the dangers. But she also knew that she couldn't back down. Not now. Not when so much was at stake. The patrol car screamed down the highway, the flashing lights cutting through the darkness. Anya's mind raced, replaying the details of her undercover mission, the faces of the Ghost Network members, the intricate web of their operations. She knew she was the key to identifying them, to ensuring the operation's success. As they approached the server farm, a sprawling complex hidden amidst the rolling hills of upstate New York, Anya saw the flashing lights of the FBI tactical team. The scene was a flurry of activity, armored vehicles, heavily armed agents, and the hum of sophisticated technology. The patrol car screeched to a halt, and Anya jumped out, adrenaline surging through her veins. She was met by Agent Davies, her team leader, his face grim but determined. "Vance, glad you made it," Davies said, his voice clipped. "We're about to breach. Time is critical. They've initiated the attack sequence. We need to shut them down now." Anya nodded, her eyes scanning the scene. "I'm ready." Lead the way. The tactical team moved in formation, their movements precise and coordinated. They breached the perimeter, their weapons drawn, their voices echoing through the complex. Anya followed closely behind, her senses heightened, her mind focused on the mission. Inside the server farm, the air was thick with the hum of machinery and the glow of countless monitors. The Ghost Network members, their faces illuminated by the screens, were frantically typing, their fingers flying across keyboards. They were oblivious to the approaching threat, their focus entirely on the imminent cyberattack. As the tactical team stormed into the control room, chaos erupted. Gunfire echoed through the complex, the sound of breaking glass and shattering equipment filling the air. Anya moved quickly, her eyes scanning the faces of the network members, identifying the key players. "That's Marcus Thorne," she shouted, pointing to a man with a shaved head and piercing eyes. "He's the network's lead programmer. And that's Elena Petrov, their communications specialist." The tactical team moved in, apprehending the network members, their movements swift and decisive. Anya's voice rang out, providing crucial information, confirming identities, and identifying key pieces of equipment. The room was a whirlwind of activity, a mix of gunfire, shouting, and the hum of failing servers. Anya watched as the team disabled the network systems, their efforts focused on preventing the catastrophic cyberattack. The cyberattack was in its final stages. On the main screen, a progress bar ticked relentlessly towards 100%, each percentage point bringing the nation closer to the brink of chaos. Anya watched, her heart pounding, as Agent Davies and his team worked feverishly to counter the attack. "They've breached the grid's main firewall," Davies shouted, his voice strained. "We're losing ground. We need to isolate the attack vector, but they've encrypted their code. We can't crack it in time." Anya's mind raced. She remembered a detail from her undercover mission, a piece of information that might be the key to stopping the attack. "I know the encryption key," she said, her voice clear and strong. "Thorne told me about it. It's a complex algorithm, but I memorized it." She quickly recited the code, her fingers flying across a nearby keyboard as she inputted the sequence. The room fell silent, the only sound the hum of the servers and the clicking of keys. On the main screen, the progress bar slowed, then stopped. The attack had been neutralized. A collective cheer erupted from the tactical team, their faces filled with relief and triumph. Anya took a deep breath, the weight of the mission lifting from her shoulders. But the danger wasn't over. Marcus Thorne, the network's lead programmer, managed to break free from his restraints. He grabbed a nearby officer's weapon and pointed it at Anya. "You ruined everything," he snarled, his eyes filled with hatred. "You'll pay for this." Anya stood her ground, her eyes locked on Thorne's. She knew she had to remain calm, to find a way to disarm him without causing further bloodshed. Before Thorne could fire, Agent Davies tackled him from behind, the two men crashing to the ground. The weapon was dislodged, and the tactical team quickly subdued Thorne. The chaos subsided, the silence broken only by the sound of heavy breathing and the hum of the servers. The Ghost Network had been neutralized, their cyberattack thwarted. Anya watched as the network members were led away in handcuffs, their faces a mixture of defeat and resignation. She knew that her mission was finally over. "Agent Vance," a voice came over Davies' earpiece, "we have Spectre in custody." Davies relayed the information to Anya. "Spectre, the ringleader, is in custody." Another tactical team moved on his location simultaneously. "We also have reports of other key figures in the network being apprehended globally. Coordinated strikes are hitting their various cells." Anya felt a wave of satisfaction. Excellent. The network is collapsing. But the danger wasn't over. Marcus Thorne, the network's lead programmer, managed to break free from his restraints. He grabbed a nearby officer's weapon and pointed it at Anya. "You ruined everything," he snarled, his eyes filled with hatred. "You'll pay for this." Anya stood her ground, her eyes locked on Thorne's. She knew she had to remain calm, to find a way to disarm him without causing further bloodshed. Before Thorne could fire, Agent Davies tackled him from behind, the two men crashing to the ground. The weapon was dislodged, and the tactical team quickly subdued Thorne. The chaos subsided, the silence broken only by the sound of heavy breathing and the hum of the servers. The Ghost Network had been neutralized, their cyber-attack thwarted, and their leadership apprehended. Anya watched as the network members were led away in handcuffs, their faces a mixture of defeat and resignation. She knew that her mission was finally over. The threat was contained, and justice was being served on a global scale. The fallout from Holt's actions reverberated far beyond the walls of the airport. News of the incident spread quickly, sparking outrage and debate about the systemic issues of racial profiling and abuse of power in law enforcement. Anya's decision to expose Holt's misconduct had brought attention to a problem that many had long ignored. Reports of similar incidents began to surface, each one a reminder of the pervasive nature of the issue. "This isn't just about one officer," Anya said during a press conference, her voice steady but firm. "This is about a system that allows this kind of behavior to continue. We need to hold people accountable, but we also need to address the root causes." The press conference was broadcast nationwide, and the response was immediate. Advocacy groups called for reforms, while lawmakers promised to take action. But Anya knew that real change would require more than just words. She thought of the people she had met during her mission, the victims of the Ghost Network's attacks, the communities that had been devastated by their actions. They deserved justice, but they also deserved to live in a world where they weren't targeted because of who they were. The incident at the airport had exposed a glaring lack of accountability within law enforcement. Holt's history of misconduct had been well documented, yet he had been allowed to continue his abusive behavior with impunity. "We need transparency," Anya said during a meeting with senior FBI officials. "Officers like Holt can't be allowed to operate in the shadows. There needs to be oversight, and there needs to be consequences." The officials nodded, but Anya could see the hesitation in their eyes. They were wary of the political fallout, of the backlash that could come from holding one of their own accountable. "I understand the challenges," Anya continued, her tone firm. "But if we don't address this, we're complicit. We're sending a message that this kind of behavior is acceptable, and it's not." The meeting ended with promises of reform, but Anya knew that real change would require more than just promises. It would require a cultural shift, a commitment to transparency and accountability at every level of law enforcement. She thought of the communities that had been affected by Holt's actions, the people who had been targeted because of their race or ethnicity. They deserved better. They deserved to feel safe, to feel protected, not persecuted. The incident at the airport had also sparked a broader debate about the balance between national security and civil liberties. Anya's mission had been about protecting the country from a devastating cyber attack, but it had also highlighted the dangers of overreach. "We can't sacrifice our values in the name of security," Anya said during a panel discussion on the issue. "If we do, we're no better than the people we're trying to protect ourselves from." The panelists nodded, but the discussion quickly turned contentious. Some argued that the threat of terrorism and cyber attacks justified stricter measures, while others warned of the dangers of a surveillance state. Anya listened carefully, her mind racing. She knew the stakes, but she also knew the importance of protecting civil liberties. "It's not an easy balance," she said finally. "But it's one we have to strike. We need to be smart about how we approach security, and we need to ensure that our actions are guided by our values." The discussion ended with no clear resolution, but Anya left feeling hopeful. The conversation was just beginning, and she knew that real change would require ongoing dialogue and collaboration. She thought of the training she had received as an FBI agent, the emphasis on ethics and accountability. It was a model that could be applied more broadly, but it would require a commitment to proper training and oversight at every level of law enforcement. Anya sat alone in her apartment, the city lights twinkling outside her window. The events of the past few days replayed in her mind, the tense confrontation with Holt, the high-stakes raid on the Ghost Network, the global takedown of the cyber-espionage ring. She thought about her undercover mission, the risks she had taken, the sacrifices she had made. She had lived a double life, balancing her role as a tech consultant with her identity as an FBI agent. She had infiltrated a dangerous network, gained their trust, and gathered crucial intelligence. She thought about the challenges she had faced, the moments of doubt and fear, the constant pressure to maintain her cover. She had been tested, pushed to her limits, but she had never wavered in her commitment to justice. She thought about Holt, the officer who had abused his power, who had targeted innocent people. She had exposed his misconduct, brought him to justice, and helped to dismantle a system that had protected him for too long. She thought about the victims, the people whose lives had been affected by Holt's actions, the communities that had been terrorized by his prejudice. She hoped that her actions would bring them some measure of peace, some sense of closure. She thought about the future, the ongoing fight against racial profiling and police misconduct, the need for systemic change. She knew that the work was far from over, that there were still many battles to be fought. But she also felt a sense of hope. She had seen the power of justice, the impact of accountability, the potential for change. She had witnessed the resilience of the human spirit, the determination to overcome adversity. She looked out at the city lights, a symbol of the community she had sworn to protect. She felt a deep sense of purpose, a renewed commitment to her work. She knew that she would continue to fight for justice, to stand up for what was right, to make a difference in the world. She closed her eyes, a sense of peace washing over her. She had faced her fears, confronted her challenges, and emerged stronger. She was Anya Vance, FBI agent, and she was ready for whatever the future held. The story you just watched is a representation of a very real problem. Racial profiling and abuse of power are ongoing issues that affect communities around the world. We believe that change is possible, but it requires collective action. Here's how you can help. Educate yourself, learn more about the issues of racial profiling, police misconduct, and systemic injustice. Seek out diverse perspectives and engage in open and honest conversations. Speak out. If you witness or experience racial profiling or abuse of power, don't stay silent. Report it to the appropriate authorities and share your story. Support organizations. There are many organizations working to combat racial injustice and promote police reform. Consider donating your time or resources to support their efforts. Demand accountability. Hold your elected officials and law enforcement agencies accountable. Advocate for policies and practices that promote transparency, accountability, and community trust. Engage with us. We want to hear from you. What steps can be taken to prevent racial profiling and abuse of power in law enforcement? Share your thoughts and ideas in the comments section below. If you found this story compelling and informative, please show your support by liking this video, subscribing to our channel, sharing this video with your friends and family. A final thank you. Thank you for watching the Sinister Crime Stories. We hope this story has inspired you to take action and become part of the solution.